Hello, and welcome to 12 Questions, a podcast where we dissect anything and everything with the same incisive set of queries.
I'm Jonny.
And I'm Paris.
And this week we will be reviewing the 2000 box office smash hit Chicken Run. So it's a bit of a summary if you haven't seen it. Chicken Run is a stop-motion film. It was made by Aardman Animation, who famously made Wallace and Gromit. So all the figures are made out of plasticine, and it stars a group of chickens trapped on a Yorkshire chicken farm in the 1950s, desperately trying to escape. The film is very similar to wartime prisoner of war films such as The Great Escape, and it's concerned with how our chickens will get out of their current situation.
It has a lot of reference to The Great Escape, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure, yeah. Right down to the musical themes. It's very much reminiscent of that British wartime feel.
And we won't be paying attention to spoilers, so if you haven't seen it...
What are you doing?
This is a spoiler warning. Yeah,
go out and see Chicken Run.
That too, but this is a spoiler warning. We will tell you everything that happens.
Yes. So shall we kick it off with our first of the 12 questions?
Our first question... Who is your favourite character?
Oh, so right off the bat, this is a bit of a dilemma for us, isn't it? So there's...
Yeah. I just nodded and then realised this is a podcast.
Yeah. Well, should we go through a couple of the characters first?
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, we got our protagonist. We got Ginger the chicken.
Mm-hmm.
Ginger is, I guess, the sort of the leader of the chickens in the farm.
The figurehead of the revolution.
Well, absolutely.
And the leader of the chickens, yeah.
She's brave. She's courageous. She's pretty smart. And above all, she's idealistic. She doesn't give up on her dream, which is
Great.
her dream, which is to get the chickens out of the chicken farm. Freedom,
yes. She's very, But then we were discussing, weren't we, yesterday, that she doesn't really have any flaws.
Yes.
Which is kind of, I don't know, not very realistic, is it?
Well, this was interesting because Ginger, as a character, really is pretty flawless. We were trying hard to find something that is a flaw in her character, and it was pretty difficult. She's got all the positive attributes and none of the negatives, and we're wondering if that actually is a problem.
Well, I mean, that just makes me think of how revolutionary figureheads, such as how they saw Lenin in the early Soviet years.
Right onto Lenin,
okay. How they saw Lenin in the early Soviet years was this magical figurehead who, was perfect in every way kind of thing. So maybe that's what Ginger's about. She's the figurehead of the revolution, and that's how people see revolutionary figures at times.
Mm-hmm. And right on the other side of the coin, and from the other side of the pond, is Rocky, the Rhode Island Red, Rocky Rhodes, as played by the only really famous actor in this film, Mel Gibson.
Timothy Spall's in this film.
I don't know. It's not really the same, is it? Rocky is a cocky rooster who arrives on the scene. A bit of a swindler, and is one of the few male characters in the film.
There's about 5 male characters.
That's even including the non-spoken parts. Yeah, precisely. What do we think of Rocky as character?
I mean, I feel like he's just he is your classic cocky git, turns all right at the end kind of thing. He's very archetypal in that sense.
Not your favourite character?
I mean, he's okay, but I just don't feel like he's anything new, so I'm not like, yay, Rocky's great. I'm very impartial to him.
Yes, that's a fair point. Which moves us on to our antagonistic forces in the film, which is to say, the Tweedies.
Ah, yes.
So the whole thing takes place on Mr. and Mrs. Tweedy's chicken farm.
Yeah.
So they're the owners of the chicken farm. How would you describe the relationship dynamic between the Tweedies?
Well, Mrs. Tweedy is clearly on the top of the power dynamic.
Clearly the CEO of Tweedy Farms.
Yeah, because, I mean, I think when I first watched it, many, many years ago, I didn't realise for a long time that they were married. I thought he was just the farmhand and that she was the main person.
Oh, wow.
I mean, to be fair, it was probably about 5.
No, and you're right. That is definitely the dynamic that is shared between them.
Yeah.
He is completely spineless.
Yeah.
And has no agency apart from paranoia that the chickens are up to something and that they're organised.
The chickens are revolting!
Mrs. Tweedy, on the other hand, what do you think of her?
I mean, well, we were saying yesterday, weren't we, that obviously they're very evil in the film because it's from the perspective of the chickens, but they're from a human perspective, they're just farmers trying to get by in life, and the egg yield is going down, and they're poor and desperate kind of thing. And she's got a lot of aspirations for something better in her life. But then, if you're a chicken, or you're watching a film from the perspective of a chicken, you obviously hate her because she's going to kill all these chickens and turn them into pies.
Yeah, that's true. She is presented in many, many ways, kind of on the surface, as a caricatured villain. There's a lot of cackling and lightning strikes and, general posturing.
Yeah.
Which is
clothes.
Yeah, which is incredibly fun to watch, to be honest. She's a great character. And then finally, well, there's a lot more characters, but just special mention to some of the supporting hens.
Babs.
We have Babs.
I love Babs. She has all the great lines.
Babs, who is really wonderfully naive. We have Mac.
Yep, the Scottish
science chicken.
Yep.
We have Fowler, the old rooster, who's clearly from the Second World War in some way, and then we have Bunty, who is a very kind of large, no nonsense hen.
Don't want to mess with Bunty.
No.
And then there's the mice.
Oh, of course, and then the two mice. So, who are kind of your Cockney scoundrel, gift of the gab salesman in the film. So, with that reviewed, who's your favourite character, Paris?
I mean, I think I might have to go for Babs, because she's just so endearing. Like, she's just so sweet, and all her lines are really cute. And
could you give me an example of a line from Babs?
My life flashed before my eyes. It was really boring.
That's certainly true.
I mean, I use that all the time. It's a great little quote.
I can confirm you do.
Yeah, I just think she's just, she's just trying to go through her life, and she's very naive about everything that's going wrong in her life, but she's realistic in that sense. She's just kind of complacent, and then I suppose at the end she's kind of like, cool, we're on holiday.
Is that a relatable aspect, do you think, for people watching the film?
Well, yeah, I do think that because I suppose if you go by like a sort of working class proletariat analogy, people do get bogged down in the fact that like they might never get above where they are, kind of thing, or like people just kind of think, society's never going to change, the world is crap, kind of thing. And she's very much in that, but she's not in that in a horribly cynical, jaded sense. She's just okay with it, and it's just quite nice. I don't know.
It's true. She's a very innocent character, and when you watch a film, sometimes you can go whole films and no one's particularly innocent. In the 2000s, I mean, this film was made in 2000, but it was an era of gritty reboots and stuff being a bit more edgy. Yeah,
it's just nice to have such a foolish character. I don't know why. It's just something very endearing about it.
Absolutely. My favourite character, I'm gonna put a twist on this. I've been thinking about it. I think is actually Mrs. Tweedy.
Okay, why? That's contentious.
Oh, for sure. So she's not she's definitely not she's the person I'd least want to actually meet by a long way. But I don't know, she's just so much fun to watch in every single scene she's in. She's just such a towering presence, both from the way she's shot, mainly you see her boots almost as much as you see her face, which, it really drives in the kind of iron grip she holds on everything in her life. And yet, despite that, you also get this second layer of powerlessness that she feels. She's, you see at the beginning of the film that the egg farm is losing profits, and she's sick and tired of being married to this poor man whose family has always been poor. I think that's really interesting. And by the end of the film, she's descended a bit more into caricature, but she just goes absolutely mad, and it's terrific fun. I really like Mrs. Tweedy. I think she's a really, really fun part of the film.
Okay, next question.
Right, moving on.
What was your favourite colour?
Ooh, okay. This film has quite an autumnal palette, I think.
Yeah, I'd say that.
So there's a lot of browns, a lot of kind of dark reds and oranges.
Chickens are brown and orange kind of colours, so they had to stick with that, really.
Yeah. Well, it kind of flips. So obviously, during the day, it's an autumnal palette. During the night, you get a lot more of the blues coming through.
That makes sense, though.
Well, absolutely. But there's very little... It's more blue than black.
Yeah.
When you think about it. I mean, there's certainly shadow.
But I made a note of loads of colours
Okay,
while we
so
were watching
you've
this.
got a clear idea of your favourite colour in Chicken Run.
So, I mean, the dark blue,
Mhm.
you get the pie machine van is dark blue.
Yeah.
Mr. Tweedy's scarf is dark blue.
Yep.
The pie label is dark blue.
Okay.
The poster, the Rocky Rooster poster, is dark blue. So all of these things have a certain ominous nature about them.
A linking thread through colour. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
I have so many notes here.
Okay, I'm keen. Lay it on us.
So all the dark blue seems to be associated with something ominous. There's even when they're in Fowler's room and his bedspread's in the back. I mean, granted, it's a British flag, so work with me here. But when his bedspread's in the background, it always seems like they're having quite an ominous conversation in the foreground at those times.
I see.
So maybe the night being dark blue is to just try and unify that, because things that happen in the night in this film tend to be quite ominous, like Ginger getting chased by the dogs.
Yes, that's true. And then could you elaborate a bit more? You mentioned the lorry, the van that brings in the machine.
It's dark blue.
Well, yeah, certainly. Well, could you explain the significance of that lorry?
Oh, it brings in the pie machine, which is what Mrs. Tweedy's going to use to turn the chickens into chicken pie, which is obviously not great if you're a chicken.
Absolutely. Yeah, so you're saying that the dark blue is an ominous colour in the film.
Yeah, and when I said about the poster about Rocky Rooster, obviously that seemed hopeful to them because they were like, oh, he's going to teach us how to fly. But it's the scene towards the end when, spoilers, Ginger discovers the truth about Rocky, that she puts the bottom of the poster with the top of the poster, and it's revealed that that's a very ominous point in the film where they all kind of think, oh no, we're never going to get out of here. So that is also linked with the dark blue of the poster.
All right, so you're saying dark blue is your favourite colour in the film?
No.
Oh,
because
no.
I've got green as
You've
well.
got more
I made
notes.
some notes.
Oh my God.
I've got more notes.
Okay.
Okay, so green. I mean, at first I thought, okay, they're using a lot of green because green and orange kind of complement each other, and chickens are mostly orange.
Yes.
But then I realised it's used a lot for aspirational things.
Mm-hmm.
So the scene where Mrs. Tweedy first discovers the pie machine, the scene is kind of brought, like you enter the scene through a green window frame, and then the pamphlet that advertises the pie machine is a green pamphlet. So this is about, from Mrs. Tweedy's perspective, her aspirations are just getting better, and she's deciding, okay, this is how we're going to better ourselves, this is how we're going to get out of potential poverty. And then from the chicken perspective, you have a lot of reference to grass, which is obviously green.
Yep.
Ginger's eyes are green.
Ooh.
Because she has a lot of aspirations.
And she, in a pivotal scene, does dream of the grassy hill. She's never felt grass under her feet being cooped up.
Yep. And Ginger's hat is also green. And I noticed with that, in the scene where she rescues it from the machine,
Yes,
when she's in the pie machine.
Great Indiana Jones reference.
Yep. The fact she rescues the hat is green, so it's kind of her aspirations. She's clinging on to them, even in the face of adversity.
Oh, that's incredible.
Also, the pie machine is dark green, which links to Mrs. Tweedy's aspirations.
Ah, very nice. So if you mix a light green of aspiration with a dark blue of ominous nature, you might get the dark green of the pie machine.
Yeah, because it comes out of the dark blue lorry.
Which is very interesting, because obviously they've been mixing plasticines to create the colours, so maybe that...
They definitely
almost
put
in a
thought
literal
into
sense.
it, yeah.
Yeah, be how that happened. So you're saying green is the colour of hope and aspiration?
I'm going to go for green as my favourite colour in the film.
Okay, that's very strong. I will, of course, point out that there are a couple of green things not on theme.
Well, yes.
So Mr. Tweedy's jacket is green, and then Fetcher the Mouse's cardigan is green. But
I would still say Mr. Tweedy has aspirations.
Well, all the characters have aspirations
all the characters
to some
have aspirations,
extent.
yeah. And Fletcher does have, you can see Fletcher's aspirations in that he does want to, swindle people, basically, but it's still he still has some kind of financial aspiration.
For sure. And green's the colour of money, of course.
And green's the colour of money. That works. That fits with aspiration, though.
Yes. But no, you're absolutely right. When you first pitched that point to me, I kind of did a quick glance over the film again, and there is really very little green in the film for the vast majority of it. It's much more kind of browny, earthy colours. The green features very prominently in the last shot of the film. But otherwise, I totally see that. I think I'd be inclined to agree. Green is the objective of the characters in Chicken Run, and thus, when they finally achieve it, it becomes our favourite colour too.
Yeah.
So on to the next question.
What was your favourite meeting?
Ooh, okay. Well, that's quite an interesting one. In terms of just purely characters meeting, there aren't as many, because most of the characters already know each other at the start of the film.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be a first meeting.
That's true.
I quite like the little sort of, I guess you call it a little meet cute between Ginger and Rocky on the roof of the chicken coop.
Mm-hmm.
So to give some context, the pie machine has been assembled within the Tweedy farmhouse. Ginger and Rocky are fed into it and narrowly escape, sabotaging the machine in the process. And over this course, Rocky ends up saving Ginger's life, which drastically changes her opinion of him. Up until this point, he's been this sort of arrogant, cocksure, if you will, rooster who Ginger doesn't respect at all. She thinks he's some kind of phony, and she doesn't really trust him. But when he does something genuinely noble and saves her life, that marks a shift between the two characters, and then this is their first meeting after that. And I just think it's really cute. He's been calling her dollface the whole movie, and suddenly he calls her Ginger.
Yeah.
You get some real insight into our protagonist Ginger, because up until this point she's been trying to achieve freedom, but you just assume it's because that's what chickens do.
Yeah.
But she looks over at the hill that they can see from the chicken coop, and she says how she looks at it every night, and I don't know, I think it may be a bit cliche, but it's quite a nice explanation of the character motivations.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
My favourite meeting is
on,
actually earlier on in the film.
All right.
When Rocky wakes up after having passed out. When Rocky first appears, basically, he's sort of passed out, and they bring him in. And then he wakes up and he's kind of like, where am I? And the hens are like, I made the bandage! I carried you in! And they're all like vying for affection from him. And I feel like that kind of sets up a lot of the film, because they're all very excited about basically this new person who's kind of the exotic American charmer kind of thing. But it also means that throughout the film, they all very much listen to him, and they're all like, oh, he can teach us how to fly, he's our hope, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that really sets that up, that they're all kind of clamouring over him. And I also think it's just quite a funny scene.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so moving on to the next question, in which we ask, how would your nan react to this? Now, Paris, I'm just going to jump in first, because I actually know how my nan would react to this. When I was, I must have been 5, or maybe 6, my nan actually took me to see this in Red Hills Cinema, or maybe Reigate. And it was one of the first films I remember seeing in the cinema. And I'm pretty sure she enjoyed it. I remember her laughing at some of the moments. I don't think I got the jokes at the time, but yeah, my nan was pretty positive about this, I can tell you. Paris, how would your nan react to this?
Well, usually this question is the generalised nan, but I feel like it really works for our own nans. Because there's a particular line where I think it's Bunty says, I've never heard such a fantastic load of tripe. And tripe is something my nan says quite a lot. So I feel like she'd really like that line.
Certainly. The film is definitely grounded in quite an old British, very British sensibility. So
yeah, definitely.
Though it's got quite a timeless quality, it's set in the 1950s in Britain, and as you said, the language and attitudes reflect that. What would you say about the character of Fowler pertaining to our nans?
Well, my nan's a very patriotic person, so I think she'd like the whole sort of army character kind of thing. Fowler
is this sort of grizzled old rooster who's always talking about his RAF days.
Yeah.
I can
imagine my nan kind of nodding along to that and being like, yes, we won the war.
Yes. But there's this lovely moment for Fowler when they're making their escape, in which he says essentially he can't, he's not able to help, partly because he's a chicken. And
a chicken!
Exactly. And then Ginger says to him, you're always talking about, what happened back in your day. Well, today is your day. And I figured, I don't know, if I were older and watching that, then I would feel quite inspired, I think.
Yeah.
That, it's not just about what happened back then, today is your day. And I think that would chime well for an older viewer.
Yeah. I also think another way my nan would react to this is she would declare she's never eating meat ever again. And within a few hours, she'd be tucking into some roast chicken.
Oh, almost certainly. So this gets a positive Nan rating.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Unlike
yeah.
You're in Town of last week's
Yeah.
episode.
No.
Cheeky plug.
This
is for Nans.
This film is take your Nan. If you haven't seen this film and you're still listening, I'm never going to say this, but please stop listening. Call up your Nan. Go rent the DVD of Chicken Run or find it online and just go watch Chicken Run with your Nan.
And if you're still listening to this and you haven't seen it, we're sorry for the spoilers.
Yes.
So speaking of roast chicken anyway, that brings us on to our next question. If this were a food, what would it be?
Ooh, now that's interesting. Well, it feels definitely something wholeheartedly British.
Okay.
So, I don't know, something you could, like a Sunday roast or something like that. Obviously, the fact that there's a chicken in that is both emblematic and maybe not representative of the plot of this film. What are your thoughts?
Well, I was going to go for another angle. My angle was a KFC because...
Oh, right, okay.
Obviously...
So we've both gone for chicken-based meals.
There's a chicken.
Interesting.
Obviously, there's a chicken. But also... KFCs are kind of, they make you feel really guilty.
Okay.
Like, they're so unhealthy. You can feel your arteries clogging up as you eat one.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that this film does make you feel a bit guilty if you're a meat eater.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm not anymore, but I was 2 weeks ago, so...
Going strong.
Going strong. So yeah, it's got that guilt to it of, you know, like, all these chickens are going to die, or they're at least being abused by the farm kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So just like KFC has guilt, Chicken Run has guilt.
Okay. Well, I sort of get that, but do you feel guilty watching this film? Even back, you know, let's say you just had a chicken for dinner and then you watch this film. Would you feel guilty?
Well, that's the thing, because if I'm eating a KFC, I do feel guilty, but then I kind of immediately stop feeling guilty. It's not like very, very deep guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Just as with this film, I'm kind of like, oh no, I ate chicken. Oh no. It's not a deep guilt, but it's like a surface level guilt that you also get with KFC.
Okay. Yeah, that does make sense. Would you? But what about? See, my issue with that is that I get part of that guilt from the kind of the unhealthy aspect of it, right? Mm-hmm. So the kind of the salt and the preservatives.
Yeah.
Whereas I'd argue that Chicken Run is quite a healthy film in the sense that its message is quite healthy. And it's very wholesome. It was made by hand. It wasn't mass produced.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
You know, it was obviously lovingly made. So it would be tricky for me to describe it with a fast food.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm getting convinced by your thought process here, yeah.
So maybe, I don't know, it does feel too obvious to say a pie, but the more I think about it, like a home... It is very
much a chicken pie.
It is is that a triumph of the film? That it is in making
it is a chicken pie.
Yeah, in making a film about chicken pies, it does itself embody the wholesome characteristics of a chicken pie.
Maybe we could go with it being a vegetable pie.
Okay,
because it's still wholesome and
Yes.
handmade and lovingly made.
Yes.
But no chickens are harmed in the process.
Okay, all right.
Except Edwina.
We don't talk about poor dead Edwina. God rest her chicken soul.
I found out, apparently, Edwina, fun fact,
Yes.
is named after Edwina Currie because there was an egg-related farming incident that ruined her political career. And Edwina has no eggs in the film. But I didn't realise that was what ruined Edwina Currie's political career. I thought it was just something to do with John Major.
Well, now you know.
I don't know.
Edwina Currie is referenced in...
Probably wasn't alive.
one of the... I think the only chicken that dies in the film is called Edwina.
I think she's the only one that dies, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So if you were to watch this film, we might recommend the perfect companion piece, a lovely, steaming, homemade vegetable pie.
Yeah.
Paris, what's the next question for us?
The next question is, why would you do that?
Why would you do that?
Why would you do that?
So it tends to be the question where we level some unashamedly savage criticism at the film. Why would they do that? So what I'm wondering, it's the problem is I find it very hard to find criticism in this film because I unashamedly love it.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the dance scene. They bring a radio in, they play some kind of doo-wop music, and they have a little dance, which is impressively shown. But I never found it. I don't know. It didn't feel like it kind of went anywhere. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I feel like it's quite nice because it is. I mean, it is a way to show off the animation, because
Yeah.
they had actual people act that out before they animated it.
I did not know
so
that.
it's quite tough to animate, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also just quite nice, like everyone sort of relaxes. And I think it's kind of like, not to go Shakespearean, but it's kind of like in
please.
Macbeth,
Yes.
when there's a load of tension and then they drop the tension by having the scene with the porter, which is kind of comical-ish.
Okay.
It's like it fulfills the same role in that there's lots of tension and then it's a drop of the tension, so you're not constantly sitting there like, ah.
All right.
So I feel like it has that function.
Okay, yeah, that's a fair point. And then I guess they do bring in the fairy light, so it's one of the kind of more kind of sparkly and brightly lit scenes in the film.
Yeah.
So it's a sort of a tension release valve, if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Oh, that's a fair point. That may be why they did that.
I feel like it is.
But another thing on that point, which I realise you might be thinking of as well, is the relationship between Ginger and Rocky.
Yeah, because I feel like it is tacked on quite cheesily in a way. I mean, I still like it. I'm still like, oh, look at those chickens having a cute relationship.
So, being the male and female protagonists, it is of no surprise that by the end of the film, they appear to be together in some respect.
Yeah, that's the thing about it. It's very predictable. It's like, oh, of course, the male and female protagonists get together. It's like every other film.
Mm-hmm.
And it also feels... I mean, there is a development arc, but I feel like the pacing's a little bit questionable. Like, they do kind of go from semi-hating each other to liking each other a lot faster than they go from hating each other to semi-hating each other.
Yeah, that's fair. Although I would perhaps argue that the incident behind that, which is one of the action centerpieces of the film, the escape from the pie machine, I'd argue that is earned, because there is this big set piece where he does do a noble thing, show a different side to his character, and save her life.
Yeah, I suppose. But then that is a reasonable explanation, but then again, it's still just really cliche.
Oh, certainly. It's absolutely cliche. But maybe is the film intending to be cliche?
I mean, maybe it is, because it is based a lot off kind of old films, like Indiana Jones, The Great Escape. It's based off very
those
cliched
films.
films.
Weren't released at the same time, I should tell you.
I know, I didn't mean
all films
old.
before 1990 are old for Paris. They were all in the same year, which is the past.
They're all older than me, so...
Well, personally, what I'm wondering about that is, what are your thoughts on, the relationship between the male and female protagonist? At the end of the film, I don't know how chickens would do this in real life, but they kiss cinematically.
Yeah.
I think specifically, why would you do that? I think that is not required. I think showing that they're kind of together in some way, maybe they're just very good friends or whatever, I think that would have been a bit more...
Well, I was reading earlier, they had a lot of troubles with thinking how to animate that, because which is why they keep having bits where they almost kiss as a kind of in-joke amongst the people that made the film.
For sure.
But then at the end, they angle it so you can't actually see their beaks touching, because they were basically like, how would we do that without it looking really weird?
Yeah, for sure. Does Ginger seem like the kind of character who would end up in a relationship?
Well, I mean, I suppose throughout the film, she's not got time for a relationship because she's trying to stage a revolution.
Absolutely.
I mean, the girl is busy, let's be honest.
Yeah, extremely strong-willed and independent as well.
By the end of it, that goal, that preoccupation with the revolution sort of thing has gone away. So that's freed her up to get into a relationship.
Okay.
So I guess it kind of shows the plot development. Like, the revolution's done, now we move on to the next phase of life.
Okay, I think that's a fair take on it. Well, speaking of revolutions, and all things historical, we move on to our next question. What is the historical significance of this piece?
Well, I mean, there's definitely the feminist elements to it.
Okay.
That it's a lot of hens, and they're doing things mostly without the help of the men. Because Fowler and Rocky do contribute, but it's mostly driven by the women.
Absolutely.
Which is, it's great.
The females are the drivers of the plot in every way in this film.
Yeah, which is refreshing, because I suppose a lot of films around the early 2000s aren't necessarily... I mean, Legally Blonde definitely is. But there's plenty of films, even now still, where the women don't really drive very much at all. So it is really nice to have a very female-driven film.
For sure. A little fun fact for you is you may have heard of the Bechdel test, which is when if two named female characters have a conversation with each other in a film and the subject of that conversation is not a man, that a film passes the Bechdel test. 35% of films, so definitely a minority of films in 2000 passed the Bechdel test, and this is definitely one of them.
Definitely, yes.
So that's the feminist angle. Are there is there anything else on that?
Well, there's certainly the revolutionary angle, and
Yes.
I'm thinking kind of it speaks of communist revolution to me a little bit. In that,
Which one specifically?
well, I was just going to go with communist revolution
Okay,
in
sure,
general, but I mean, you've got the hens are exploited for their labour, represented by eggs,
Of course.
and then when they're no longer helpful, bit like spoilers for Animal Farm, bit like the horse in Animal Farm.
Okay.
They're killed, like
Right.
Edwina.
Yes.
So it's very much, the workers are exploited all their lives until they're no longer useful, then they're just kind of shoved off somewhere. And then Ginger is like, you know what? Had enough of this. Let's do some revolting.
The chickens are indeed revolting in this film.
Finally, something we can agree on.
Okay. Are there any other elements of a revolution in this film?
Well, there is also the Industrial Revolution.
Yes. Yeah. So that's what I was thinking about. Is that you're going. So in the film, the pie making machine is definitely shown as something very industrial in contrast to the way that business is done at the Tweedy farm. So it's there's all kinds of gears and cogs and all that sort of imagery that you traditionally associate with or full scale automated production, as Mrs. Tweedy puts it, and that's interesting. It's I don't know if the film is drawing a parallel between introducing mechanized machinery and that sort of that shift from a more sustainable way of doing business at the farm. That's to kill a chicken every now and again to get their eggs, into what inherently is an unsustainable business. So the plot of the film is that they're going to kill all of their chickens and make them pies. But then you have no more chickens.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
So is that
And she never says anything. It's never implied that they're going to leave a few chickens aside to, keep the flow of chickens kind of thing.
In the third act, when they finally get the machine working again, she says, "Get the chickens," and Mrs. Tweedy says, "Which ones?" And she says, "All of them."
Oh, yeah, she does.
Absolutely.
So she's gone from not like it would have been sustainable, but the egg yield was going down, to something that's going to be completely unsustainable because they've got a short term, lots of chicken pies, and then they're done.
So is that a critique on, certainly developed countries in the 20th and 21st centuries, when they scale up their automated and mechanized production and their just general industrialization, is that a critique of them doing so unsustainably? Which certainly is still a very valid criticism even today in the way that we conduct business.
Yeah,
Are chickens in this film the fossil fuels in our world?
Yes, that's a good point, because there's the whole, we're going to run out of coal, we're going to run out of oil, and people will constantly criticise more sustainable forms of energy, like, wind turbines are an eyesore and things like that. But if you think about it, once you've run out of chickens/coal, there's none left.
But of course, there is a flip side to this, which is, so whilst they're painted as the villains, the Tweedies are clearly struggling. And this is something you don't, it's harder to pick up the first time viewing, but then if you view it, looking a bit more in the background details, the Tweedies aren't doing well. Their profits are minuscule and going down. And this machine, this technology offers them what they think might be a way out.
It offers them hope, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I suppose you could say they get a bit carried away with that because they're like, oh, we're going to get this great chicken pie business running. Yeah. But they don't think too far in the long term. I think Mrs. Tweedy is very short-sighted. She's like, oh, your family and his father and his father, they were all egg farmers. Well, no, we're going to change. But she's very much thinking, this is the great change we need, but not thinking about how it's really going to work in practice.
So perhaps it's not just a historical thing, this industrial message that the film brings across. Perhaps it's a far more contemporary cautionary tale about new technologies and their use, their promises versus their actual results.
Absolutely.
Well, there you go. So that's some of the historical insights that this film manages to pack into its hour and a half runtime. So regarding history, if you could step into your time machine with your copy of this film,
I've got one.
Time
machine.
Yeah.
Got a DeLorean.
It's weird that you don't use that more, actually, but fair enough. When you step into your time machine, you got your copy of this film, you can go anywhere in history and you can show this to a person, show Chicken Run to someone from the past, present, or future. Paris, who would it be?
I'm actually going to go with a slightly less historical angle. I'm going to say I would give it to, and I don't know the name of this person, the inventor of clay.
Wow.
Because I feel like when they invented clay, they didn't think someone was going to make an hour and a half animated film about chickens, and I think they'd just be really happy with that fact.
That's a real wholesome answer.
Thank you.
I think that would be lovely. Presumably that would be someone in ancient Sumeria? Or do you mean
I have no idea.
Do you mean like plasticine? That kind of thing?
Maybe I mean plasticine.
Oh, nice. I think that's definitely something similar to what I do. I go back and show it to Ray. Is it Ray or Rory? Harryhausen is his name. He's one of the pioneers of stop motion animation. He did the. You may have seen the moving skeletons in Jason and the Argonauts.
Yes.
He's the guy behind that, a real visionary. So I might show it to him. But also. Or another early character in cinema, I don't know, perhaps Orson Welles.
Yeah.
I'd like him to see it. There's actually, I think one of the opening shots is an homage to Orson Welles' introduction in the film The Third Man, in which Ginger is suddenly brought out of shadow in a very stark relief. And that's really nice. So it might be nice for them to see that. And then finally, what would you think of giving this to actual British prisoners of war in wartime Germany?
Could you explain where you're going with that?
Well, the whole film it presents itself as an homage to films about prisoners of war, but those films are obviously based on real stories. So the chickens build a contraption to fly out of the chicken farm, but that was done first by British prisoners at Colditz prisoner of war camp, who built a glider and escaped by flying out. So would this be an inspiration to them?
So when you're giving it to the prisoners of war, are they still prisoners of war?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
I'm smuggling it in their Red Cross package.
I mean, would it not feel like you're kind of taking the mick out of them?
Oh.
And calling them chickens?
Calling them chickens. Yes, okay, but that's
might be a bit condescending,
But that's the thing, this film is full of chickens for sure, but they're chickens sort of in name only. Like, they band together and accomplish a heroic goal.
That's true.
Although some of them are presented as, dopey or innocent, like Babs, or...
Yeah.
It's tricky. But Ginger certainly... There's nothing about the stereotypical presentation of a chicken that is echoed by certainly our protagonist. So perhaps it would give hope and inspiration. Or perhaps they find it derivative because it's based on what they already did.
Yeah. I don't think I would give it to them.
Okay.
Because I wouldn't want them to be feeling like I was calling them a bunch of chickens, really.
Okay. That's completely...
But you feel free.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Just please return my time machine to
Really,
me.
just drop me in it with those people in the past. Okay. Should we move on to our next question?
Yeah, our next question is, when will this be forgotten?
Now, this is quite an interesting one because... So we've mentioned that it's set in the 1950s, but I only really found that out today while I was doing a bit of research. I think this film
I had no idea it was set in the 1950s.
Because it's really timeless.
I think it's because if, chickens don't really have much... I mean, chickens just act the same all the time.
Yeah, that's pretty true.
So the only way you can find out the timing is looking at the humans. And I suppose now I think about it, her dress is quite 50s style.
But then again,
I mean...
Yeah. You're kind of content to see it as rural, where things move slower anyway. There's a lot of mechanics in the film. There's not much really electrical, which is it's very satisfying. Again, I think that's quite something quite nice about it, and something quite obviously instantly understandable. So when it's like in the 80s when you showed a computer in a film in the 80s, it gets dated instantly because computers get smaller and that sort of thing.
No,
but
that's true. Yeah,
because all the technology in this is mechanical, it doesn't really
It doesn't feel like it's a really old film.
No, absolutely not. So in that sense, I think this film ages tremendously well. With regard to it being forgotten, it is quite a landmark film. Obviously, it's so far the highest grossing stop motion film ever made by quite some way. So it's an absolute smash hit. And as we said, the themes in it still ring true today. So, and I would certainly hope this film will remain relevant for a long time and remain remembered for a long time.
I think it's definitely got the charm about it that would allow it to remain remembered. And I also think, because there aren't a huge amount of stop motion animation films out there, Aardman are quite the leaders in that category. It's not like with, I don't know, if you see a sort of old film and the special effects now look awful.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have that because no one's really built on their work that much, so it still looks super innovative and amazing.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's a very characteristic style, which just looks great, really.
Yeah, and I think Aardman is very beloved in Britain. Everyone loves Wallace and Gromit. Everyone loves Chicken Run. Most people love Shaun the Sheep. They're very, they're very well loved.
So in Britain, certainly this will be
that's true,
remembered. Yeah, it really oozes Britishness, which I think does bring us quite neatly onto our next question. A question which, in our lives, we must always ask. So we thought we'd put it on the podcast. What does this have to do with Brexit? Now, I'm going to take a quite contentious, what may initially seem contentious point of view and argue that this film is a pro-Brexit film.
Go for it.
Now, not explicitly so. It's not pushing this message, front and centre. But,
because Brexit wasn't really on the agenda in 2000.
Well, no, certainly not. But this film really buys into the stereotypical or the classic British archetype. We're talking rolling fields. We're talking winning World War II. We're talking Elgar. all that sort of thing. When people think of real good old honest Britain, it's really buying into that, and that's in no way the same as Brexit, but it's certainly the same sort of rhetoric that people on that side use, and it presents quite an appealing picture of Britain being independent and being able to go it alone. So the chickens kind of break free and leave the chicken farm,
and they end up on an island.
Well, yes, that's absolutely it. So perhaps most telling about this representation is that the final shot of the film, all in green, aspirational green, and perhaps the greenest shot of the film, is zooming out from the chickens at their was presented as their paradise, essentially, their end goal, which is an island with a sign on it that says "Keep Out." So I think this film, at least for the chickens, is shows the merits of a small island Britain. Isolated. So obviously there is an American character in it.
Well, I was going to build on that because
please.
I do recall when the sort of Brexit, when the referendum was approaching, there was a lot about, if we leave Europe, who will we have economic ties with? And there was a lot of, we'll always have America.
Yes.
And the rooster is American. So it does kind of show this whole idea that the Brits have that we always will be connected with America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's certainly true. But and all the talent kind of. Well, here's an interesting question. So in the chicken coop, all the talent comes from within. They already have their scientific genius there. They already have the pluck of the pluck, if you will. They already have that drive and motivation and the ability to get things done. But they still have to buy stuff from outside the chicken coop. This is where those two cockney mice come in.
Yeah, that's true.
But they are presented mainly as swindlers, basically.
Yeah.
So that it's implying the outside trade maybe is less than ideal.
Perhaps.
But then they are like most characters in the film, undeniably British. They have a Cockney accent.
That's what I was thinking, because they also do end up on the island with them.
That's
true.
So
they are still kind of, I'd say they're within the British bubble of the film.
Okay, fair enough. Paris, would you argue with that? Would you perhaps put forward a non-Brexit reading of of this film?
No, I wouldn't. I've got to agree with you because I think that it does represent leaving even if the Tweedies are kind of the bureaucratic EU, it's leaving the clutches of something else to go it alone kind of thing. But then coming at this from, I feel like our opinion's going to be tainted by our own opinions a little bit.
Oh, for sure.
It's kind of difficult to say that the EU and the Tweedies are completely equal because...
Oh, absolutely.
I didn't think the EU were as bad as the Tweedies kind of thing.
No, certainly
so
not.
It's in Chicken Run, it's good because they go it alone and it's better for them, but that's not necessarily how Brexit's going to go down. So maybe it's just a very propagandistic look at Brexit.
I see. Okay, so it's a best case scenario, if you will.
Yeah. It's what Nigel Farage was seeing in his head. He just watched Chicken Run a lot, and that's when he decided to join UKIP.
Yeah, and Ginger is a very inspirational character, so you could see... Actually, when did he start that part? Was it... You don't think...
I don't know.
Could it be? Oh my word. You heard it here first, folks. This is what started it all.
Chicken Run
by Aardman Animation.
Chicken Run ruined us.
Nick Park, I lay this at your door. Anyhow, well, that's
lay this at your door.
Oh boy, well that's I think that's quite an in-depth analysis as to how this relates to Brexit. Moving on to our next question.
Yep.
So this film is, as we keep saying, a triumph of stop motion comedic animation. Mm-hmm. But if you could reproduce this story in a different medium or a different genre, do you have any thoughts as to what you pick?
See, I might go with... the first thing I thought that's coming to my head is like one of those really harrowing vegan documentaries.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Because, for obvious reasons,
yes.
They're exploited by the farm,
so when
when they're laying eggs.
When you say vegan documentaries, you mean like a kind of meat industry expose sort of thing?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. And then how would the story work in there?
That's the thing, the story kind of wouldn't work.
Right. Because
it would then put the power with humans rather than with chickens.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's questionable, but that is the first thing that comes to my head. It's very much like we said earlier, you do feel kind of bad for eating meat and eggs when you watch Chicken Run. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's a fair point. How would you shoot it, so to speak? So obviously the chickens are very emotive. Well, you might not be able to get story and characters across, but would you would the majority of the film be spent with the chickens?
I think it would, because, I feel like if you were a farmer, you wouldn't really want someone filming you to slag you off, would you?
So this would be like a sort of guerrilla underground film?
I suppose,
hidden cameras? Cameras on chickens?
I don't know. Chicken Run is shot from the perspective of the chickens.
Yes.
So that would work in this newly genred thing.
Mm-hmm.
You get the humans from the perspective of chickens. I feel like that would work.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. How would you feel about... See, I was going down the route of what would happen if you played this story as a stage play. So, fairly small cast, stage play.
So you got people dressed as chickens?
Well, no, this is the thing.
Oh.
What would happen if you took essentially the same script, but just played it straight as humans? Would it work? Would you... there's certain...
You'd have to edit it slightly.
Well, there's a lot of references to eggs and chicken-based puns, but
yeah.
Is this fundamentally a human story that's in chicken form?
That goes back to what we were saying about sort of communist revolutions.
Ah, yes.
Because then you could adapt it so that the Tweedies are the oppressive bourgeoisie class.
Right, of course.
And the chickens are the oppressed proletariat class. And
For
then
sure.
the mice would just be, the kind of in-between...
Yeah, the kind of... Thénardiers of...
someone that plays the mouse did play Thénardier in the West End, so it works.
Well, there you go. But would you... I don't know, I think... I wouldn't necessarily want to see a musical version. I'm sure it would be amazing.
No, that's not what I was going for.
No, for sure. I'm sure it would be amazing, but maybe just a stage adaptation. Although it should be mentioned that the music in this film is amazing.
Yeah.
Just as a side note,
it's great.
It's fantastic. Howard Gregson Williams composing it. Yeah, it's just really nicely done. It evokes that kind of old British war movie style, and there's There's a lot of kazoos in it, interestingly enough.
Yeah, I noticed that. I quite liked that.
Yeah, it's got its own. It's very catchy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a shout out to the music, really. It's really great. So, given all that we've said about Chicken Run, are there any other points that maybe we haven't got to? Because this is one of my favourite films, one of Paris's favourite films, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other just kind of unfiltered praises of this film that you might want to give?
I think we've mostly covered what I had written down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've definitely.
What do you mean?
We really like this.
This is off the top of our heads. We're literally just coming off this. No preparation, no nothing. Nothing is written down.
We didn't make notes while I was watching it last night.
No, that didn't happen.
That did not happen.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing I can think of at the moment. But do you have anything?
Well, one thing I really like is, it's not particularly involved or subtle. It's just the way it's shot.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting that this is obviously a stop motion film. There's no kind of rolling camera. There's no actors in action or whatever. But the director still has choice over the camera movement. And the camera actually moves quite a lot, which I figured would have been really difficult for stop motion because you've got to synchronize it with the models. So any camera movement, it's definitely intentional because it's planned to the nth degree, even more so than with live action. So the way it's shot, it's shot definitely like your hypothetical documentary. It's shot from the chicken's perspective. It's very low down. The majority of shots of the humans, you see their shoes or you're looking up at them.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you'll have like a forced perspective trick where the chickens are nearer and the humans are in the background and it appears that they're in the same size.
Yeah.
But it's always shot from the chicken's perspective. And then there's this lovely little reversal at the end of the film when the chickens are sort of in full flight and they're taking power, and then suddenly there's a kind of first person shot from Mrs. Tweedy's perspective looking up at the chickens.
Yeah.
And I just thought, it's no incredibly subtle thing, but I just thought that was a really nice way of connecting you with the chickens and their world, and also showing that reversal of power towards the end of the film. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So that brings us to our last question. Give this a more honest title.
Oh, okay. Well, what have we said about it? We've said that it's got a very strong historical resonance.
Yeah, we've said that grass is aspirational.
For sure.
The grass is greener.
The grass is greener.
That could be a potential title.
That could be a good title. You could call it...
Vive la Chicken Revolution.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know, that feels a bit French for this film, based on the other things that we discussed.
True, yeah.
Something about... I don't know. I feel like Babs has some very iconic lines. Could we co-opt it with a Babs line?
What would you go for?
I don't know.
I mean, we've definitely got a lot about sort of proletariat revolution.
So should it be something about the glorious annals of the first dreamer chicken, these, Ginger.
Yeah, something. The first dreamer chicken.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Here's to the chickens who dream.
The chickens who dream. That's pretty good.
I like that.
I like that because it feels like it's sort of almost been badly translated from Russian. Like it's sort of a memoir from 1925, and like it means something incredibly profound. But like once you translate it, it's just the chickens who dream.
Chickens who dream.
Okay, well,
yeah, I like that.
Well, Comrade Paris, I very much enjoyed watching the chickens who dream with you.
As did I.
Okay, well, I think that just about does it for this episode of 12 Questions. I really hope you've enjoyed listening, and join us next week for another insightful and incisive commentary on a different piece of media using the same set of 12 questions. Until then, I've been Johnny.
I've been Paris.
And thanks very much for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.